John Wick collides with a wall in his vehicle. He staggers out of the car, bloodied and injured. He applies pressure on a knife wound in his stomach. He takes out his phone and watches a video of his wife Helen on the beach as he crawls to the side. John sags and closes his eyes. He awoke on a dreary day just a few days ago. He recalls flashbacks of his time with Helen, up until she fainted in his arms lately. She was afflicted with a disease that took her life. It's the day before her funeral. Marcus, John's longtime buddy, approaches him after the ceremony to express his sympathies. That night, John receives a delivery. It's a little beagle. Helen's note is discovered by John. She wrote to him that she had accepted her death and now wanted John to find his John is in tears. He takes the puppy outside and examines its collar, which has a flower on it, which leads John to believe Helen called the dog Daisy. Daisy follows John about on his day as he drives his Mustang. He pulls over to buy petrol alongside 3 Russian mobsters, including Losef Tarasov, son of crime boss Vigo. Losef approaches John's automobile and compliments it before asking how much he wants for it. It's not for sale, according to John Losef. Then approaches Daisy, but John scares him away. One of Losef's friends peers into the car and bids John a nice day. Daisy wants to use the restroom as John prepares to go to bed. When they arrive downstairs, 2 guys in shadows stand in front of John while a third grabs a bat and whacks him in the head. When Daisy whines, he begins hitting on John. One of the males approaches the dog and snaps her neck. The guy removes his mask, revealing Losef, who knocks John out. Later, John awakens and walks up to Daisy, petting her head. Losef drives John's automobile to a store owned by Aurelio, who instantly recognizes the vehicle and demands to know where it came from. Luz boasts about stealing the automobile and killing this person's dog. Aurelio slugs his opponent in the face. Later, John stops by the business and inquires about the loss, and Aurelio provides John his name to corroborate that this is the person who stole his car and murdered his dog. Later that night, Vigo phones Aurelio to inquire as to why he struck Luz. So he took John Wick's car and killed his dog, explains Aurelio. Vigo merely says, "Oh." John enters the basement with a sledgehammer and begins slamming the floor open. He discovers a cache of firearms and ammo. Vigo meets with Lost to address the issue at his house. He socks his kid twice in the stomach to chastise him, reminding him of the person he just wronged. Vigo reveals that John used to be linked with him until he met Helen and wanted to quit. John had a reputation as the boogeyman, or rather the guy who was hired to slay the boogeyman. Vigo phones John to attempt to mediate the situation, but John hangs up. Vigo sends a team of masked hitmen to John's home to kill him. However, John gets the drop on them and takes them all out with ease. He shoots them down and ends up fighting the last few before stabbing the last guy through the heart. John then calls a cleanup crew to dispose of the bodies. This is not the first time they have done business with John, and they know it won't be the last. Vigo meets with Marcus and asks him to kill John Wick for a new contract that he's put out worth $2 million. He also instructs his assistant Avi to call for others to take the job Marcus accepts. John goes to a hotel, the Continental, to stay as he conducts his business. John meets another old friend, Winston, over trying to find Luce. Marcus climbs to the roof of the building across the street at night and prepares his weapon to fire into John's room. He notices someone entering. He shoots a warning shot at John. Perkins here. She begins firing at John as he attempts to avoid her. She informs him that Vigo has quadrupled the contract if she violates the hotel's restrictions. He soon catches Perkins in a headlock and offers her jewel pity in exchange for telling him where she can obtain Losef. She informs John that he is in the hotel's baths below John, then knocks Perkins unconscious and abandons her with his buddy Harry. John enters the club bathroom where Loss and his friends are. As they notice John, he starts firing at them while Losing runs away. John murders every hitman in his path before fleeing in a getaway vehicle. Harry holds Perkins chained to a chair, oblivious to the fact that she has dislocated her thumb in order to escape. She exits and covers Harry's face with a pillow before shooting him. Vigo maintains his hidden cache of money at a church, which John visits. After taking down the other thugs in the church, John forces the priest to lead him to the money. He sets everything on fire. Vigo learns of the fire moments before he is caught in a hail of gunfire courtesy of John. Although he kills most of Vigo's men, he is knocked out when an SUV rams into another, throwing John off his feet. Vigo captures him and wonders why he's gone to great lengths for revenge. John tells him that the dog was a gift from his dying wife, and that Luz took that from him. Vigo leaves him with his henchmen for them to suffocate him with a plastic bag. However, Marcus is watching from the next building, and he shoots one hitman in the head to let John take out the other. John gets his gun and shoots at Vigo's getaway car, leaving only him alive. Vigo is forced to tell John that Luz is hiding in a safe house in Brooklyn. The safe house is guarded by armed men, but none of that stops John from killing them and storming the place. Luz once again tries to make a run for it, but John catches him and finishes him off. In retaliation for Losef's death, Vigo has his goons find Marcus and bring him to Vigo's home. There, they beat him good until Vigo and Perkins shoot him to death. Vigo calls John to tell him this, just before boarding a chopper out of there. Before being taken to the chopper, Perkins is confronted by 4 men, headed by Winston, who informs her that she violated the Continental's regulations. Her execution is carried out by 4 guys. After John discovers Marcus's body, he sets out to hunt out Vigo. He spots the baddies on their way to the chopper and attempts to smash into them with his automobile. Vigo orders Avi to kill John, only for John to hit him with his car. Vigo attempts to shove John's car over the cliff, but John escapes unharmed. In the downpour, the two battle hand to hand. As Vigo tries to attack John, he pulls the blade into himself before catching it and slamming it into Vigo's neck. He abandons him to die. We return to the opening scene, where John is still bleeding. He feels motivated to continue after seeing the video with Helen. He visits a dog shelter to treat his knife wound. He then brings a dog with him, and the two of them go home together. The film starts with John Wick, and he's going to get his car back from Abram Tarasov's warehouse. Abram seeks vengeance on John for killing his brother Vigo and nephew Luce. Before he reaches to his car, John kills all of Abram's guards. When he drives away, a swarm of Abram's thugs attacks John. His car is damaged, and the henchmen crash into John with their autos, but the man is unfazed and effortlessly dispatches all the thugs before arriving at Abram's office. John simply pours a drink for Abram and himself. He chooses to spare Abram in exchange for a peace offering. Abram asks John about his ability to achieve peace. John comes home to the unidentified dog he adopted at the end of the first film. He summons Aurelio to come pick up the wrecked automobile, yet Aurelio says he can fix it. Once he departs, John reburies his weapons beneath cement, as he believes he has had enough of the assassin life. He views a video of himself and his late wife Helen on his phone. Later that night, another assassin called Santino D'Antonio pays John a visit. He hands John a marker he gave him, which is effectively a blood oath he took to get out of the assassin life when he wanted to be with Helen. Santino wants John to assassinate his sister Gianna, who is about to become a member of the High Table, a group of elite assassins. John resists, despite the fact that he knows what will happen if he does. Santino leaves John's residence before grabbing an RPG launcher and destroying it. Fortunately, the dog lives this time. John goes to the Continental Hotel to meet with Winston to discuss the marker and what Santino has requested of him. Winston cannot do anything about it since John took the oath, and if he continues to refuse it, his life will be up for grabs. John then heads off and leaves the dog in the care of the hotel's concierge, Karen. John heads off to Rome to complete the jewel task. He stays at the Continental there, owned by Julius. John then meets with several people to get the weapons he needs to kill Gianna. John attends a party that is basically Gianna's coronation. She is accompanied by her loyal bodyguard Cassian, Common. John confronts Gianna alone. He tells her that Santino sent him. She chooses to die on her own terms and slits her wrists. Gianna lays in a pool as she dies. John holds her hand and puts a bullet in her head to make it look like he killed her. Cassian notices John as he walks away. Cassian attempts to pull his gun on John knowing he is working again, but John is faster. As the other hitmen discover Gianna's death, he flees and begins murdering them. As he flees, John shoots them all. Cassian catches up to him and battles him until they smash through the Continental's glass. Because no blood may be spilt on Continental premises, John and Cassian take a seat at the bar to settle their worries. John recounts the marking and how Santino ordered him to murder his sister. Cassian knows, yet he cannot let his ward's murderer go unpunished. He exits after paying for John's drink. Ares, Santino's mute bodyguard, is then spotted by John. She informs him in sign language that she will be meeting him. As John is heading back to New York City, Santino puts out a $7 million contract to kill John. The contract goes out to all the hidden assassins in the area. A violinist in the subway pulls out a gun from the violin and tries to kill John, but he subdues her and breaks her neck. A heavyset Asian man goes after John and gets his brains blown out. 2 men in the subway try to get in on it, and John brutally kills them with a pencil. Cassian finds John as he gets on the subway and fights him in the train. John stabs Cassian and pushes the knife into his aorta. He tells Cassian that if he pulls the knife out, he will bleed to death. John leaves Cassian on the subway. John runs into an assassin posing as a homeless man and asks for help as 2 assassin janitors go after John. The homeless assassin kills the janitors. John tries to seek refuge from the Bowery King, an assassin who had had a run-in with John and was left with a scar on his neck as a result of it. After John saved him, the BK now considers himself unbreakable. He is also aware of the reward placed on John's head. John is able to track down Santino with the assistance of BK. John visits a museum where Santino Jennels is preparing to take his seat at the High Table. John storms the party and begins pursuing all of Santino's guys. Before fighting Ares, John follows Santino through a hall of mirrors. John stabs Ares and abandons her to die. Santino rushes to the Continental to seek refuge, knowing that he can't be touched there. John finds him in the lounge. Winston knows what John is about to do and tries to calm him down. Still, John blows Santino's brains out. He then goes to pick up his dog from Karen. The next day, John goes with his dog to meet with Winston at the park. Winston informs John that because he killed on Continental grounds, the High Table has doubled the contract and sent it to every assassin across the globe. Winston must mark John as excommunicado, but he gives him 1 hour before the contract takes effect. It then becomes evident that every single person in the park is an assassin, and they have their eyes on John. John tells Winston to let everyone know that if they go after him, he will kill them all. Winston agrees. John leaves as Winston puts the word out. Every passing person looks at John, knowing who he is and what they want from him. John is forced to take the dog and keep on running. The movie begins with John Wick and his unidentified pit bull running through the streets of New York City. He has less than an hour until he is formally declared excommunicado and receives no hitman services, as well as the $14 million reward on his head being effective. He hops into a cab and leaves the dog in the care of Charonby at the Continental, handing the cabbie a token. John continues on to the New York Public Library. He discovers a book containing concealed marking coins and a crucifix necklace after being instructed by the librarian. Ernest, a lone hitman, enters and attempts to murder John, leading to them knocking each other around the bookshelves before John gets a heavy book and uses it to beat Ernest, dislocate his jaw, and finally snap his neck with it. John then travels to see the doctor to fix up his wounds, but he is unable to finish before the hour is up, and John's life is up for grabs. John finishes the stitching himself, but before he leaves, the doctor tells him to shoot him in the right areas to make it look like John forced him to help. He then starts to run through Chinatown, where he is found by a gang who chase after him. They end up in a warehouse where they fight, and then come across a bunch of knives, daggers, and other pointy weapons. Despite their efforts, John hurls knives into all the thugs before tossing an axe into the leader's head. John continues running and catches a horse, with which he uses to kill some thugs by getting it to kick them in the face before he mounts it and rides it through the streets. Thugs on motorcycles try to catch him, but John takes care of them fast. John arrives at a theater and displays the crucifix to get admission. It is the Ruska Roma's lair, an organization that appears to groom hitmen from a young age, and it is possible that John learnt what he knows there. He meets with the director, a High Table member who has known John since he was a child. He offers the director the crucifix necklace, which will allow him to go outside of New York securely. She refers to John as Jardini. The Continental is visited by the adjudicator, another High Table member who has come to settle matters after John violated the hotel's regulations. She meets with Winston and informs him that because he gave John a 1-hour head start before his contract expired, he had a week to resign as manager of the Continental. Similarly, she goes to the Bowery King and tells him he needs to stand down since he provided John refuge after Santino smacked him on the head. John goes to Casablanca, where he is at first attacked by hitmen, until one guard stops them, since he knows why John is there. He is escorted to meet with an old friend, Sophia, who is accompanied by her 2 loyal and vicious German shepherds. He presents her with a marker with her blood on it, done when John helped protect Sophia's daughter and hid her. While she isn't keen to help John, she agrees to do so. He wants to locate the Elder, who ranks above even the High Table themselves, and can remove John's excommunicado status. The adjudicator returns to the Bowery King and declares that he has no intention of stepping down. The adjudicator has 0/Bowery King 7 times as punishment. Sophia drives John out to the desert, but because her half of the agreement has been met, she abandons him there. He goes through the desert until he passes out, at which point the Elder finds him. He understands why John is there, but it isn't until John says he wants to stay alive in order to preserve Helen's memory that he gets interested in assisting. John swears allegiance to the Elder by removing his left ring finger and handing him his wedding ring as payment. The Elder tells John he will lift his excommunicado status if he kills Winston. John agrees. John returns to New York and is spotted in Grand Central Station by would-be assassins, though they are killed off fast by Zero's men, as they want to save John for Zero to kill him. He fights and kills Zero's men, even getting chased by them on motorcycles through a bridge, but John evades their guns and katanas before killing them. Zero almost catches up to John, and nearly gets him until they reach the Continental, and John is officially on the hotel grounds and can't be touched. Inside, Zero admits he is a huge fan of John's and that it would be the ultimate honor to kill him. John goes up to meet with Winston. He knows that John has been ordered to kill him on behalf of the High Table. However, Winston offers him a choice. John can go ahead and kill him, living his life as a killer, or he can live as a man the way Helen would have wanted. The adjudicator then arrives to find both men. Winston refuses to step down, and John refuses to kill him. She then makes a call to declare the Continental deconsecrated, meaning killing will now be allowed in the hotel. Winston opens his stash of weapons to John and Karen while he stabs in his safe room with John's pit bull. Winston gives armor-piercing shots to John and Karen after they kill 3 High Table assassins. Bullets pierce the bodies and blow out the heads. When all of the other assassins have been eliminated, John is left to face Zero and his soldiers. The thugs throw John through a series of glass cases until he gains the upper hand and kills them all, leaving only Zero alive. The two fight fiercely, but John eventually overpowers Zero and runs his own sword through his body. Zero still considers being slain by John to be an honor. As the morning comes, the adjudicator offers to parley with Winston. They meet on the roof of the hotel where she offers to let Winston stay at the Continental, but John must be dealt with. Winston then appears to betray John by shooting him multiple times, sending him falling off the roof to the ground below. The adjudicator reconsecrates the hotel and starts to leave, but she goes around by the alley where John fell and notices he is gone. She informs Winston, and they realize John is still a problem. John is picked up by TikTok Man, who brings him to Bowery King in his lair. He sees how messed up John is, and he tells him that he is pissed at the High Table. He asks John if he's pissed too, and John says he is. And this is the end of the video. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and support us with like, and suggest a movie you would like to recap it.